Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunches. I'm your host, David Turetsky, alongside my trusty friend, partner, and co-host from the HR Data Labs and Salary.com, Dwight Brown. How are you, Dwight?
I am spectacular, David. How you doing today?
I'm okay, especially if I can figure out how to get that video out of the way.
Our maiden voyage, we're gonna have tech issues. We'll work it out.
Yeah, hopefully this is playing on LinkedIn. I'm not sure, but if it isn't, we will certainly make sure it is next time. But for right now, hopefully we're live and we'll see. Hopefully you can hear this. Oh yeah. Yeah, there it is. Actually, I went to LinkedIn
Nice.
on my phone and you could hear it. We are live. So, but
All right.
I got to get rid of this thing. So, hold on. Let me get rid of this. If I can.
Maybe,
I
maybe
don't
not.
know if I can. We may be
It's the
looking at this
Hotel
thing.
California. We checked in, we can't check out.
We may be looking at this thing forever, Dwight. So
Exactly. I think actually I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this could
there
be a
we go.
piece of art on oh, there we go.
Well, it is definitely a piece of art, and
Yeah,
hopefully these turn out to be. So
abstract.
exactly. So this is the first of our HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunches, and like we do on our podcasts, we always ask one fun thing that no one knows about you. But this time we're going to do things a little differently on the Brown Bag Lunches. We're going to ask, what's the last thing you did for the first time?
My
So
turn?
Dwight, yeah. Well, actually, if you want, I could take this because I always ask you to go first.
Yeah, you go first. Let's change it up. We're changing
Okay.
everything else. Let's give it a
Okay.
shot.
I will admit that I've had trouble, and we're going to talk about this in a little while, but I had trouble on dating apps. So for
Hmm.
the first time, I used Facebook, and I met a wonderful human being. So,
Oh,
and she and I are in a wonderful relationship, and it was amazing. It was the first person I had met on Facebook, and I was like, wow, this kind of works. So, you know, that was the
that's
last thing I
awesome.
did for the first time, is actually have a successful relationship off of Facebook.
Off of Facebook of all places.
Facebook. Yeah, and I don't
Huh.
really do a lot on Facebook. So it was a
Yeah,
miracle. She's wonderful and we have a great time.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and we are going to dive into the dating app
We
topic
are. That is
in
one
a
of our
little
topics
bit.
for today. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Dwight, what's the one thing that you did the last thing you did for the first time?
Had to look at the script, didn't
I
you?
did. I had to look over at the outline.
No. By the way, people, we're going to be doing that a lot.
Yes. Yes. This is the first time. So
Yeah. All right. So the last thing I did for the first time.
not jumping
Um,
off of a cliff.
no, no, no. I've done that many a time now, and it's the so mine is not as great as yours is, but the last first thing that I did was go to an amateur rodeo. This
An
was
amateur rodeo.
Yeah, I had been to pro rodeo before. Um, my mom grew up in a little West Texas cowboy town called Pecos, Texas, and every time we went there in July of every year, we would go to the rodeo. Their term or whatever you want to call it was home of the world's first rodeo. So I got to see a lot of professional rodeo. But about 2 months ago, I was able to go to an amateur rodeo, and I'm down in Phoenix for those of you who don't know, and it was out north of the city there. And it was interesting seeing the differences between the amateur rodeo and the pro rodeo. And
They all wear
so
cowboy hats.
yes, they did. I did too. I probably should have worn my cowboy hat.
It doesn't really go well with headphones though.
Yeah, I kind of yeah.
So,
Ends up being more of a top hat than a cowboy hat at that point. But
which might be okay for our first ever
right,
BBL. So
right.
but
exactly.
we are where we are. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to try and do a little bump here because we're going to transition over to our topics. Okay. I don't know how well that works.
That
So
that
our
just cut off all of a sudden. It was like, "Quack."
bam, like just like that. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how
Oh
to,
yeah.
do the up and down on the fade at some point. But
Oh yeah.
I don't even know if the bump is necessary. Today our topics are going to be we're actually have a bunch of topics to talk about today. First is the introduction of the BBL. What is the brown bag lunch? What is it supposed to do? Why are we doing it? Which I'm sure a lot of you are kind of contemplating right now. Why are they doing it? We put out so many episodes, in fact, one a week, that it's
Hmm.
kind of strange. Why would they do that? Well, the answer is because we want to get more interaction with our audience, questions asked, and other things. And the best thing to do that is try and doing it live. And
Yeah.
thought leadership. So we love doing it.
Right.
The next topic is going to be interesting. We're going to be talking about HR and dating apps and the similarities. We're going to compare and contrast. And the next topic is going to be trends of the day. We're going to talk about some things around pay transparency, which have been interesting to us, especially of late. And the last thing is going to be interesting HR news. So, what's the latest on what's happening in the world? Today, we're going to be talking about Executive Order Palooza. So, the new administration has not
Love that term.
disappointed. It has not disappointed us by issuing tons of executive orders, and we're going to talk about some of the more interesting ones that affect HR. All right, so let's talk about our first topic of the day. Maybe I should hit the bump music again. By the way, just wanted to let you know that this program is sponsored by Salary.com. Salary.com for your consulting, data, and technology needs around HR and compensation. I had to throw in the commercial there. So the brown bag lunches really are our attempt of doing really more timely releases of discussion and insight. And so what we want to try and do is establish a more of a conversation with our audience, with you, about what's going on in the world. A lot of times when we record, we have to record a month or two in advance, and so therefore we can't be as timely. With the brown bag lunches, what we're trying to do is give you more real time feedback as to what's going on in the world of HR, so we can get ahead of things and not have to worry about the thing that we recorded 2 months ago and whether it still has legs. Now, all the episodes we've ever done still have legs. Don't worry about that. If you want to go back and listen to all 200, except for the first one, except for the first one, um,
Yep.
I think they're still good. But what we want to try and do is get ahead of things and talk about things in a more timely fashion. We're going to have guests. We're going to have, as we talked about, those three specific topics: special topics of the day, trends of the day, and interesting HR news. We're definitely going to have those pretty much each time, but we'll probably try and have guests to give some more commentary beyond just Dwight and I.
Yeah. People get bored just with us, but
I don't know
I'm
why. I
really
thought we were entertaining.
well, we are for ourselves. I don't know if other people think that, but
Are we really doing this podcast just for ourselves and, eschewing what other people
oh,
need?
don't you know the world's all about me, David?
I did not know that. Well, that's actually something I learned
Yeah.
for the first time,
Me,
the last time.
world, this is how it works.
My son asked me the other day, he said, Dad, are there any solar systems where there's a sun that's revolving around a planet? And I said, dude, I don't know. It's a great question. I'm not in astronomy or in astrophysics, but, maybe.
I might be out in space sometimes, but other than
I
that.
might be, yes. I might be. And I might play one on television. The other thing to mention about the BBLs are we are not lawyers. And so while a lot of times we might talk a lot about regulations and we might talk about laws that affect all of you, including people in states that have pay transparency, do not take anything we say as being legal
Oh,
advice.
right.
No legal advice here.
None
None.
whatsoever.
None.
Yeah.
In
We
fact,
always have to put that rider in there.
yes, in fact, it's going to
It's
be on every single episode. Not legal advice.
just in case you mistook David and I for having more knowledge than what we actually do.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is that, we want your questions. We want you to interact with us. We want you to be able to give us your feedback, ask questions of us, and let us know what's on your mind.
Yeah, please do. We want that interaction. Matter of fact, when we were talking about doing this, that was one of the main drivers, was just being able to have a little more real-time interaction with people.
Exactly. So we're going to pause for a second and go to our next topic. And just as I do that, my son is coming in the door right now. My
Of
dogs are
course.
announcing it. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I can. Um, so we're going to talk about special topics, and our special topic for today is one that goes back to last year, almost exactly at this time. It was February 8th, 2024, when we were doing a wrap-up episode, and we were talking about the experience that a lot of people have doing or trying to get a job with online websites that focus on applicant tracking and recruiting. And one of the comments that Dwight made was, wow, it's just like dating. It's so frustrating. And so we said during that conversation, we should do an episode where we compare and contrast HR applications to dating applications. And by the
It-
way, we thought it was hysterical at the time. Still do. Still
as
do.
as David's learned, my mind just works in weird ways every once
So
in a
does
while.
mine. So does mine.
Yeah,
That's the
I
reason
think
why
that's what
we're
makes us
friends.
mesh, you know?
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
so what I was thinking about this when I was contemplating the compare and contrast of HR apps and dating apps, one of the first things that's obvious is supply and demand, right?
Mhm.
So there's a supply of people on both sides, and it's really a people oriented um, process, both of them, dating as
Right.
well as getting into a relationship with an employer. And that's the
Yeah.
second piece. These are relationships. We're in a relationship with an employer. Sometimes it's a abusive relationship. Sometimes it's a really good relationship. And those relationships have troughs and they have peaks, right? I mean, we go through cyclical times where we could either be doing a great job or we could be doing a terrible job. We could be
Mhm.
communicating or not. So that was
Right.
my opening salvo, Dwight, in the
Yeah.
compare and contrast. What were your
Well,
thoughts?
and so the way, one of the things that I think about is just you talked about the relationship, and there really is sort of that build phase with the relationship that's consistent. Um, on a dating app, somebody likes you, you match, and you start a conversation. It's a messaging conversation back and forth, and Um, sometimes it's very short, and people understand very quickly that there's not a relationship possibility. Sometimes it it goes long enough that you have the first date, and um, you can see what I'm thinking in terms of each of these stages of a relationship.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think of with the dating apps and the ATSs. The other thing that I think about is catfishing. Um,
Yes, definitely.
there there is no number one. There's no
Well,
lack of catfishing
well,
on
you have to
dating apps.
define what catfishing is for those people who don't know that term.
Yeah, so catfishing is representing yourself. Oftentimes catfishing is referred to via the pictures. And so somebody on a dating app posts pictures of themselves from 15 years ago when they were young and in shape, and now they're old and fat, and but they're not putting that on their dating app. That was probably borderline inappropriate for me to say.
It's totally fine. We totally understand.
They're,
But
they're
you're talking about
more mature and
misrepresentation.
more filled
Yes.
out.
There
Let
you
me
go.
I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're misrepresenting themselves, and with with the application side of things, it's the same thing where um, either the applicant is misrepresenting themselves to the potential employer, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. it's kind of like when you get into an interview, and I'm always very cautious if I get into an interview and all I hear is great stuff. You
Yeah.
know, we're a
Yeah.
great company. We're doing this, we're
Yeah.
doing that. And it's like, all right, so what's the downside? What's the crap of the company?
Sure.
Because I
Yeah.
want to have a full picture, you know, and it's the same thing with dating apps. We're imperfect, and it's good to know the upsides and the downside.
Well, there's also the imposter syndrome that happens either in dating, that
Yeah,
first date, or the going to your interview, where you're not sure if you really can live up to the expectations that were set during the chatting in
right.
either the interview stage or in the, the before the interview stage, or when you go for that first date. And so
Yeah,
that mental, like, exercise you do as you enter into both of those things are highly stressful,
right.
and it causes people to act weird sometimes,
Oh
and
yeah.
to pretend, either pretend there's somebody they're not, or to totally tank the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. There, like you said, there's that pressure there, and it really does make people act in weird ways. And the hard part about both dating and the employment process is that you've got that pressure there, and once you kind of draw in the picture, then everybody expects that from you. Where did you go? What just
Sorry, my
happened?
son was knocking on the door. I had to
All of a
step.
sudden you disappeared. I'm
I
like,
was on a
where,
podcast.
what the?
I just had to tell him I'm on the podcast, recording exactly at this time.
Oh yeah,
So
your picture was
I'm
gone and
sorry,
everything.
everybody. I'm sorry. My son doesn't understand when he hears me in here and he hears me on a podcast, and he should not knock on the door.
I figured you just got bored with what I was saying, so
No,
I'm
no,
like, well,
dude,
I guess I
no.
better cut it off there, huh?
Yeah, we all live in a world where we have distractions, and so
uh,
yeah. And my son is the best distraction I could ever imagine.
oh, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, with both of
What I
them,
was
I
saying
think
was,
what
before
I
you
was
rudely
saying
stepped
was,
away.
I mean, and you know how ADD I am. I lose my
Yeah,
train of
yeah.
thought, and we're not going
I'm
back there
sorry. I'm
again.
sorry. Let's go to
But
the next topic then.
I do have a miracle though.
Oh my
It
God,
does
really?
actually occur to me. I think it's I think it's the expectation that's built
Sure.
that, every time I would get a match with somebody and we would be having a great text conversation, I would suddenly have this sort of honeymoonish expectation
Yeah,
of what being in a relationship with that person could be like, something that no one could ever live up to.
yeah.
And I think it's the same, either on the applicant side or the employer side. So,
And one of the things we have to overcome is this. I hate to say this, but this hope that the grass being greener, this
mhm.
person is going to be better than anything I've ever had before, or any relationship I've had before, or we are going to be better. In the same
Right.
way, that employer is going to be better than ever. I've never had a better job. I've never had a better boss. Whatever.
Hmm.
The reality is, the grass is never greener. The
Right.
person you meet might be good for now, might be good for who you are now, and hopefully that stays. But in the
Hmm.
same way, employment is employment at will, and it may not be true of ever, right? Because ever is
Right.
a long time, and we don't have contracts, we don't have employment law that enables people to be shackled to a job, and that's a
Right.
good thing.
Yeah.
And so there will be times when relationships need to end, both in the dating side as well as in the employment side. But
Hmm.
for right now, and I was thinking about this, Dwight, and I don't know if we had covered this yet, but I'm going to bring it up now, which is the artificial intelligence that positions two people together, or an employer
Right.
and an employee together. It's more of a, in the employer world, the job posting is out there, and you put yourself in the running for that. Whereas
Right.
on the dating app side, it typically in the ones that I've used,
Hmm.
where the female chooses a group of men by swiping a certain way or whatever,
Right.
and then the man sees that there's some interest there and swipes the other way or swipes that way as well, and then the pairing happens, and
Right.
then the courtship through the conversations occur. And in the same way, the employer puts something out there, then the potential employee or the candidate comes and sees the job and applies to it. And if there's that meeting of the minds, then they keep moving forward.
Right.
But the AIs have been very strange on both
Yeah.
sides of the the artificial intelligence on
Yes.
dating apps as well as on the HR side.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting the way that the AI does stuff, and not always that match made in heaven.
No,
Um,
not at all. And if you get to the next round, good luck on both sides.
yeah. And if you think that you're in a match made in heaven, be careful.
Yes. Well, even when you on the dating app side, even when you think you're in a match made in heaven, you could talk for a little bit and then realize that you're not,
Right.
and then either person can pull the plug in the same way that the application tracking system does.
Right.
More so on the application tracking system because sometimes you receive that note from the ATS saying, "Yes, we've gone a different direction," like 5 seconds after you put in your
Right.
resume. So,
Yeah, exactly.
well,
Still a long ways to go.
yes, there is. And I think we've beaten this one up
Yep.
significantly. So, for all of you who are watching and listening, if you have any comments and you want to do your own compare and contrast on dating apps versus ATSs, please let us know. We'd love to hear your opinion on it. The next topic we really wanted to try and cover is on pay transparency. And I'm going to do the bump music for 1 second. There you go. 1 second.
There we go.
So the trend of the day that we really want to touch on being pay transparency, and the two examples that Dwight and I wanted to touch on were first Illinois and New Jersey. Pretty much, we could, guess we can cover them at the same time.
Mhm.
But the one area I wanted to pick on for this, and I'm very proud of both of them for doing this, is Illinois and New Jersey have chosen to extend the model of the pay transparency from base pay of the pay transparency legislation from base pay and just requiring base pay to requiring base pay plus
Mhm.
short-term, long-term incentives and benefits, and giving the person a fuller picture of total compensation, which
Mhm.
I feel is just a wonderful idea. Wonderful.
Right.
And I've heard back some comments on it that, it's a little complicated. How do I discuss short-term incentives? How do I talk about eligibilities? How do I talk about targets? And I don't know if you've read it, but I didn't read a lot of detail in it. All it said
Mhm.
was you need to disclose them
Yeah.
and that there will be some eligibility there.
Purposely made fairly general, I think. Especially with legislation like this, where it's very new and the lawmakers don't even have all the potential angles worked out. And
Right.
so, it took me a while to learn that, but with legislation, when it goes forward, so much of it is about just getting it out there and then refining as you go. And everybody thinks that all the answers are there, but that's not the case. But yeah, with these two having that, and talking with clients, especially that total comp piece is a piece that's confusing for everybody. And
And actually one of the fun can you hear me?
yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to let you know.
yeah,
I opened up on the other side so I could see any comments that were made, and we have one comment which I'll talk about in a second. But
good.
yeah, but the interesting thing we heard from Massachusetts was when we talked to one of the people who sponsored the bill was that the hardest thing they tried to do as a legislature was try and foment or come up with what does total cash or total compensation mean. What
Hmm.
does something beyond base pay mean? There was a lot of understanding about base pay, even though base pay itself has a lot of wrinkles to it.
Right.
Um, they could foment on an understanding about base pay. They couldn't get beyond that, and so I think there was a little bit of a complication in the technique of trying to design legislation that was more inclusive of beyond base pay. So
Right.
that's at least what we heard about Massachusetts, and it would be interesting to hear from other states. I think we had the CHRO from the state of Utah. It would be interesting to hear
Yeah.
his perspective on other states. I know he's not in the legislative body, but he
Hmm.
represents the entire state. It would be interesting to hear his perspective on that. So I'm gonna have
Right.
to actually reach out to John to talk to him about that. But
Yeah.
so that's why I think it was brave of Illinois and New Jersey to go to that extent. But to your point, it's a little vague. Um,
Right.
and
Well,
while, sorry, go ahead.
and I can really see why it's big because the early adopters of this, Colorado being one, and the good part about that is that it gave the rest of the U.S. a glimpse into the positives and pitfalls,
Yeah,
and what are the questions, how are people trying to game the system? That's another big thing, and
yeah,
how do you close the loopholes that prevent that? And um, overall, how do you make it a better program? I think is what's always at the uh, top of the hearts and minds
yeah,
for the lawmakers as they're
certainly,
developing this stuff.
yeah. And we've seen some of the legislation like Colorado and California that go in different directions. Like Colorado chose to include things like career frameworks,
Hmm.
whereas California chose more about the public aspects and doing reporting and having reporting requirements,
Yeah.
whereas some other states um, didn't go that direction. But you're right, a lot we're learning a lot from the states that went first, and the new legislation is kind of learning from it and kind of
Hmm.
stretching and stretching their wings, as you will. And
Right.
because this is a state issue, each state is probably going to want to put their particular cultural spin um, on these regulations
Right.
and their relationship with the companies in those states.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point because the each state is different in terms of the industry and the worker types that are predominant, and so many of those state specific aspects of things. And so, how do you build something? And I think that's probably why we're seeing it at the state level as opposed to the federal level,
Yeah,
because it would be very difficult, I think, to come up with some sort of U.S. wide um, thing that actually
right.
fits.
That everybody would agree on. Yeah,
Right. And I know, we're supposed to do our predictions at the end of the season, but my prediction is by within 5 years, all 50 states will have pay transparency legislation.
all 50,
That's my prediction. I could be dead
including
wrong. I could get an
including
F on that
Missouri,
one.
Mississippi, Alabama,
Yeah,
Tennessee. You really think so?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. After enough get on board with it, then there's going to be federal pushes for it.
Yeah. Well,
Then
maybe.
again,
Maybe.
so I'll put the caveat in there though. At this particular moment in time, we have a lot of unknown, and I'll leave it at that. So,
And that's perfect timing for our next segment, which is Executive Orders of Palooza.
oh, I love what you called that. Palooza.
Yes. Well, in our interesting HR news segment today, we're going to talk about Executive Orders of Palooza because
No.
one of the fascinating things we've found, and I think predictably, is that the new administration would come in and overturn a lot of the things that the previous administrations had been doing. I don't think anybody could have seen the hundreds. Well,
Mhm.
I think it's not hundreds, but the I think there were 38 executive
Scores.
orders. But sorry, scores,
The
yeah.
scores, yes.
And right now the scores are 38-1 because one of the
Yeah.
executive orders got overturned at least. Um, but I think what you've seen is a complete reversal on several fronts, and we're going to get into that. But I first want to tell everybody that there's a really great place to go, which SHRM put out an advocacy first 100 days um, website on the SHRM site. So I don't know if it's behind the firewall, if it's in front of the firewall. I'm not sure. I'm actually going to put it in the. Let me copy the link. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Hopefully, it gets to all of you, but we'll be able to see in a minute. But one of the things that you should definitely pay attention to here, because I think it's quite fascinating, is that there are a lot of executive orders. And just because executive orders get written and signed does not mean they're law. In fact, they are not law.
Mm.
Executive orders can overturn other executive orders. They can also um, have departments do specific things. But one of the things they cannot do, they cannot override legislation.
Mhm.
So some of the executive orders that have happened already, we've seen that they've been squashed or quashed.
Yeah.
One of them was the birthright, the
Federal
birthright
grant.
citizenship.
Oh, the birthright. Yeah.
Birthright citizenship that was prevented or halted by a federal judge. Now, that's just a temporary halt, as far as I know,
Right.
but that's certainly been halted. And your point was which one?
Oh, I was thinking of the federal grants one.
Yeah, the federal grants. Well, the federal grants faced a lot of pushback on both sides of the aisle and has
Right.
subsequently been rolled back because there were so many programs that got affected that I don't
Right.
know if it was necessarily considered to be that that effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how many of the executive orders do get rolled back. But that one, you know, just far reaching enough that it would have brought basically would have brought the country to its knees. And
Absolutely.
but it is interesting that because you listen to the media and the way that this is presented is, oh, we've got these executive orders, and you think that it supersedes any legislation out there. And uh, I think it's important that people know that that's not the case.
That's true. But again, we are not constitutional lawyers. but,
Yeah.
but we do know for a fact, well, a fact in our minds, that executive orders cannot override legislation. So it
Right.
takes acts of Congress, bills to pass and then get signed to be able to overturn previously signed legislation.
Yeah. But
The
it's
other
a
thing,
sign of
yeah,
what's to come.
exactly.
I think that's the
Exactly.
hard part about this.
The other thing that we've heard of is DEI really taking a back seat, well, not just taking a back seat, but actually being let out of the car,
You're right.
um,
Pushed
and
out of the car.
pushed out of the car while it was moving.
Yep.
One of the things we heard today, and that's what makes this timely, and that's why we really love the cadence of being able to do these on a weekly basis. Hopefully, is
Mhm.
that the executive order, well, one of the things that came from that executive order around DE and I today, a rule came out that said people have to get their pronouns out of their email signatures
Oh, yeah.
from the federal government. Mm. Okay, well, that's the most important thing we have to deal with today on this program. We're going to get rid of the signature, the email signature pronouns from my. By the way, I'm not doing that, but I don't work for the federal government. But I think that's, to your point, that's directionally where this is headed.
Right. Yeah,
Disappointing, but
I mean that's the hardest part about it is the fact that it's not the removal of the pronouns itself. It really is just sort of the signaling of the central theme that we're seeing among all these executive orders. And I don't want to get too political about it, other than to say that uh, we seem to be uh, we seem to have been in a time machine that carried us back at least 100 years.
Something like that. Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and and I'll say that in the context of we are now once again wrestling with these things that were being wrestled with 100 years ago,
Oh yeah.
where up until this point we've moved far beyond that. And, you know, yes, we wrestled with them a little bit, but
Yeah.
anyway, I don't want to get too political about it. It's,
That's okay.
uh,
This is your part of you. I mean, this is your program too, so you can. It's part and parcel to our ability to communicate with people.
yeah.
One of the other things, though, I want to bring up is RTO, because return to the office for federal employees is now a mandate. And,
Mhm.
we've seen this happen for many organizations. And some organizations have taken more of a hybrid approach, and some have said, we're going back full time. And that's got to be okay for the populations, including the employees.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of a lack of understanding about some of the reticence that employees are going through, given the change in how childcare before and after school is dealt with.
Mhm.
And to me, that's got to be a a bridge that gets crossed at some point, which is you can't not address it. It's not something that you can
Right.
say. It's, hey, listen, it's your problem, parent. You got to deal with it. I don't care.
Right.
I'm your worker. I'm your employer. I don't care. You either work here until 5 o'clock or you don't. And the person goes, okay, well, my kid's getting off the bus at 3. If I'm not home to get the kid off the bus, that's basically child abuse. So you're asking me to kind of choose between my child and you? Easy choice.
Right.
Until or unless something changes in childcare, which childcare is ridiculously expensive right now.
Hmm.
And
And ridiculously rare. I mean, it's so
yes,
hard finding.
yeah.
It just, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been on care.com in a while, but I still have my subscription.
Mhm.
We're not being sponsored by care.com. I'm sorry. But we're still sponsored by
I haven't
Salary
even
Now.
heard of care.com. So
Oh, it's a
it's,
really, sorry, now non-commercial message. It's a really good site to be able to find either childcare, temporary childcare, or even permanent childcare,
okay.
elder care, and other things.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, anyway, so something's got to give there, and I think RTO would have been more successful had there be some kind of addressing of the child care, either
Right.
initiatives or whatever by the government. But nothing
Right.
happened. So parents, figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah. I
the
mean,
way it should be.
it is, I mean, it's going to be so disruptive in so many ways. And, if it were 1 year post COVID, I think it would be a slightly different situation. Now, the childcare thing, we've actually had
Yeah.
those issues even predating
Oh
COVID quite
yeah.
a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but, just the look and feel of the whole return to office mandate. Now that we've been at this for what, 4 years now, that we've mostly been remote
Yeah.
um, and to try to turn it on a dime. If you look at the, if the problem with having the mandate like it was pushed forward, in addition to what you talked about with the childcare, if you look at the companies that have had return to office mandates, they do it in, typically do it in phased approaches in
Yeah.
a way
Yes.
where they're allowing people the time to be able to
Correct.
wrestle with those issues of childcare,
Right.
where you take the executive order and it's just like you're back
Yeah.
and good luck.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
but I do think, honestly, I think that the purpose of that particular executive order was just to thin out government employees. Because you look
Well,
at how
yeah.
they tried to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, there was a buyout that was being talked about to give federal
right,
employees the ability to leave the administration, to leave the government, um, uh, to the tune of a couple million people. And
Hmm.
yeah, you're right. That's an interesting thought. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Just another way around, kind of a backdoor way to be able to thin people out. And
Yeah, that's terrible and frightening all at the same time.
yeah, there's just there's a lot of stuff going on,
Yeah,
and it's scary as hell. There are very few people who aren't afraid in one way or another,
sure.
and it's yeah. I mean, we put one foot in front of the other 24 hours at a time, and
Yep.
that's about all we can do with it.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Well, and that's why having this program is meant to help people communicate with each other,
mhm.
talk about some of these ideas, and to enable you to get your questions answered around the topics that are top of mind for HR professionals,
Right.
not just around the U.S. but around the world. So
Yeah.
we want to try and keep our HRDL BBLs to around 35-40 minutes.
Hmm.
If you're still with us, thank you so much for being here the whole time. We really appreciate it. If you want to get in touch with the program, you can contact us at hrdatalabs@salary.com. That's hrdatalabs@salary.com. You can go to our website, go to salary.com, and there is actually part of the website that has podcasts under the resources, podcasts, and you'll see HR Data Labs. But if you want to reach out to us, do it here or do it on the HR Data Labs at salary.com. Thank you very much to salary.com for sponsoring us. We really appreciate you. We love you.
Yes. Thank you.
And thank
Yeah,
you,
we don't
Dwight.
get the little heart things that come
Yeah,
up
well,
with.
actually, I should because I'm on a Mac. There you go.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There
Okay.
you
I freaked
go.
out one of my clients the other day when I I was on and I think I did the two thumbs up and all of a sudden
Yeah,
all these balloons started going. She's like, "What's that in back of you?" And
actually,
I said, "I was
I don't know
thinking
why
the
it's not
same thing."
working.
Yeah.
Whatever. People are
The
like,
hearts
wait a
aren't
minute.
working for me.
You guys are on. You're still on the air,
Oh
right?
my
Yes,
God.
we do. We're still on the air. Yes, we know. Well, this one should work.
Oh, there you go.
Is it working?
No.
How about this one?
No. None of them are.
No, no, none of them except for
Oh,
this one.
only the hearts.
There you go. Well, at least
Yeah.
one of them. At least the
Little
love
something.
works. So love to all of you for hanging in there, especially as we lose our minds now. Friday afternoon, so Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to our next Friday's episode of the Data Labs BBL, where we'll talk more about the topics of the day. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.